Welcome to Dads Meet World, a podcast where two dads sit down and figure out what life lessons can we learn from a 90s TV show. I am one of those dads, Tyler.
And I am the other one of those dads, Brett. Welcome aboard this fun podcast express. How you doing tonight, Tyler?
I am doing quite well indeed. How are you, Brett?
I'm doing all right. It's been a busy weekend, but it felt good to just kind of sit back last night and immerse myself into a couple of episodes of young Corey and his not quite aged friends.
Yeah, I don't know if you realize this, but it feels like Corey keeps having a new friend every single week. I'm really hoping they'll get that figured out.
It does, yes. I think they might get around to figuring that out, but we'll see. For now, let's call it the I don't know. Death chair feels a little too mean, a little too final.
Well,
what
apparently
do you think
that's what the cast used to call that, though.
Yes, it is.
So, for the record, Brad and I have watched the show many a times. We love the show. We've talked about it for years. And then we just kind of were chatting one day. And we were like, hey, we like talking to each other, and we like talking about Boy Meets World. Why don't we just record ourselves talking about it?
Indeed. I actually grew up with Boy Meets World when Boy Meets World first premiered in 1993. Corey was supposed to be 11 years old. I was actually 9 years old, just about to turn 9 the night it premiered. So I very literally grew up with Corey in those early years. And as it's gone on, I would catch it in reruns. They finally brought it out on DVD, and I had all the DVDs very soon after they were released. And now it's hit streaming, and between DVDs and streaming, all of my kids have been exposed to Boy Meets World and have become fans themselves.
And that makes me so happy to hear. Yeah, I think it's interesting is that when I think back to my childhood, I knew Corey as like a teenager. Because I was born in 92, so I don't remember whenever they first started airing, but I can very much remember like their senior year and like very vividly watching those episodes with my family. And then, they were always playing at reruns on some channel somewhere, so I feel like I was always watching them, here and there, especially whenever Disney, the Disney Channel became like where everyone finally had access to it. Because for years it was like only with the box could you get it, and then it was like one year they were like, hey, we'll just give it to you with the rest of cable. Like, sweet. So yeah, Boy Meets World felt like it was always on Disney Channel.
Yes. Yeah, that was before they started doing that really weird let's draw the Mickey Mouse head in the corner that never really lined up with the wand that they were all using.
Yeah, that was a thing.
So what we'll do, why don't we tell everyone what we're going to do with these podcast episodes here, Tyler?
Well, I guess we can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take every single episode, scene by scene, moment by moment, and figure out, what can we glean from this show? It's roughly, almost 30 years old at this point. A little over 30 years old, I guess, whenever it premiered. So, what life lessons can we get from it? Is Feeny's lessons still relevant today? And as we watch it as adults, how are we interacting with it now, and how does it impact us? And especially as we have children who are watching this now too, and we're watching it with them. So I think it's gonna be fun. Maybe we'll bring in a guest or two, special person. We'll see how that looks like when we get to it. But for the most part, it's just gonna be us two dads going through and talking about all this. So we're gonna start with the pilot episode titled The Pilot.
All right. And so just for, because I'm an incredibly detail-oriented nerd, Tyler and I are going to kind of throw primary hosting duties back and forth for each episode. Yep. He's going to take the odds. I'm going to take the evens. But we'll give you guys a synopsis, and I like to be really nerdy, and I grabbed all kinds of episode credits like air dates, IMDb ratings, writers, directors, all that fun stuff. So, Tyler, do you have a synopsis for this one, or do you want me to read the one I've got?
Why don't you go ahead and read the one you got? Only because I can tell it to you, but it's not concise and didn't actually write one out. So you're a little more prepared than I am.
All right, so here we go. Pilot episode, also known in reruns, and the original title before they had to title it Pilot, because all pilot episodes get titled that for whatever reason. Corey is caught. Oh, sorry, Brother's Keeper. That was the title I was building up to. Corey is caught listening to the Phillies game in class while Mr. Feeny is trying to teach the class about love. Eric decides to take his girlfriend on their first date to the Phillies game instead of Corey, so Corey decides to live in his treehouse. Yes. Now, this episode was written by series creators Michael Jacobs and April Kelly, directed by John Tracy, and it originally aired September 24th, 1993, 8:30 p.m. time slot, sandwiched between Family Matters and Step by Step, debuted to 16.5 million viewers, ranking it as the 5th highest viewed show of the entire night, and currently has...
Brett?
Yes?
Did you mean step by step, day by day?
Yes, I did.
I just feel like when you say that title of the show, you have to start singing the song.
You kind of do, yeah. So we've got Chicago, Philly, and then Wisconsin for some reason. But yeah, 5th highest viewed show of the night out of all shows on that Friday night, and currently enjoys a 7.9 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
Wow, that's actually really surprising.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So let's kick this off.
Yep. So the very first scene of the entire series takes place in the lunchroom. We see young Corey going and getting a snack out of the vending machine, and Mr. Feeny walks up and wonders, "Hey, kid, what are you doing getting garbage?" And Corey looks back at him and goes, "Hey, what are you doing drinking garbage?" And so we kind of established really quickly, like, these two kind of like to throw jabs at one another.
Yeah, and we really get to know Mr. Feeny right off the bat. He's already shown to be very formal and very proper. He's addressing Corey as Mr. Matthews. And I love his sign there when Corey calls his coffee astronaut juice. He says, "There's no gravity in space, therefore," referring to astronauts, "they suck up," because Corey talks about sucking down astronaut juice. Learn from them. It's just such a very, very concise and witty barb from the teacher there.
I'm going to read this real quick because this is the first line that Sean Hunter, Corey's best friend since 4 years old, says. Now, that's more context we get later on, but for right now, Sean is just kind of a random kid at school. You know, they're friends, but they're not like the bestest of friends. But this is the only thing he really says, the first line. He's a teacher, man. Keep ragging on him, and he's going to make your whole 6th grade year miserable. Now, I think what's so interesting about that, because as the show progresses, it is, Sean who is the one that's making things difficult and trying to be disrespectful and disruptive, And Corey's the one who's like, "Hey, man, you need to knock this off because we got to be careful. We don't want to get grounded again."
They really do swap personality, at least concerning the school environment from that first scene at breakfast, which is it was always a foreign thing to me. I went to a school in the middle of nowhere, and we did not have breakfast before school in the lunchroom. Now, my kids today have that opportunity. Now, they take advantage of it all the time, but I didn't when I was growing up.
We had a school breakfast, but very few people did it. I know I did not. It was always grab something, get in the car, because mom's going to lose it if we don't get moving. So we move into then the boys discussing about the fact that there's a female teacher who Feeny's talking with. This is the only episode this female teacher is in, and we never see her again. So,
Yep. R.I.P. Evelyn.
Yes.
Mr.
Thank you for your
Feeny's,
service, Evelyn.
His potential paramour.
But we move into Corey and Sean and their other friend, Nicholas, discussing how late they stayed up by using one of the night shows, late night shows. Now, I'll admit, I'm not sure which one they're talking about. My assumption would probably be, what's his name? David Letterman is my guess.
It would have had to have been Letterman or Leno at this point. 93 would be my guess. Those are the two big names I remember at that point. Because Letterman had already really those were it at the time in that time slot that they would have been able to stay up for.
But I think it's just so fascinating that like in the 90s, like that was the thing. Like how late could you stay up before you got in trouble or passed out?
That's
and
what we did.
That.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't say that I ever had these types of conversation contests, but I can remember staying up on special nights where there was, a special guest on one of those evening programs or something special on the evening news that aired at 11 before them that was, worth staying up for, that my parents would let me stay up for.
I'm just going to throw this out there. So the final tally is monologue, first guest, bad sketch, funny zoo animal, and then Steve Lawrence. That's a lot going on in potentially like the first half hour or so of a talk show.
And yet it all fits. That's and sadly, that's pretty much the same exact formula that they largely stick to these days. I mean, the bad animal we swapped in for a second guest most of the time, but
Right, that's true. I mean, I guess I think a lot of times more of the late nights are getting much longer. I don't watch them myself all that often, but they're doing a 10, sometimes 15-minute monologue depending on what's going on in the news. But frankly, who cares about what's going on now? We're talking about the 90s.
That's right. We don't need today's news. We want 1993.
Exactly.
Now, for Nicholas, I was curious. Did you recognize Nicholas from anywhere else?
I mean, he looks familiar, but I can't place him for the life of me right now.
I did a very, very little bit of digging. He's played by an actor named Chauncey Laparty. I think I'm pronouncing that last name right. He has 38 total roles, acting roles to his credit. But he's perhaps best known for a little movie he was in that premiered about 5 months before this episode aired, where he played a character known as Squints in The Sandlot.
Oh.
Yes, for all of you Sandlots fans, Nicholas is Squints. And we will never see Nicholas again in the universe of Boy Meets World.
Is he the one with glasses?
He is indeed.
Okay. It's been so long since I've watched that movie, and it's always one of those that my wife and I'll go, hey, what do you think about watching this? And then we'll convince ourselves to watch something else. But it's one of those we gotta watch soon. I think we'll probably show our son it because I think he'll like it.
Oh, yeah, I think he will. Especially when Samson gets out.
Alrighty. So we move into the classroom because the bell rings and the boys are quite disappointed, and now they got to wait 4 hours to lunch.
Yes.
So we're in the classroom, and Feeny is trying to get them to do Romeo and Juliet, a little bit of it. There's actually a girl laying down on the desk, which, this day and age, that's kind of odd. Feeny actually has a plastic knife that the boy is supposed to use to, quote-unquote, fake stab himself.
Which is odd, considering I believe Romeo poisoned himself rather than stabbed himself.
Yes, but could you confirm with me, is this something in the 90s you were just allowed to do?
as far as the using props and that kind of an experiential atmosphere, sure. Yeah, we were allowed to. We weren't, at least in my school district, we weren't, we didn't have metal detectors or anything like that. But it was a much different time. Schools were a lot different then. And I'd say this classroom, at least for this class, although I will be quite blunt, I don't remember ever touching Shakespeare in 6th grade. That's just my school experience. That was something that our school district didn't do until, 8th grade, maybe not even high school when I was in there. But yeah, that kind of acting it out type of thing, that was something that we did have a fair amount of teachers that would be encouraged to do so, even with fake prop knives.
Okay. Well, we're just going to go ahead and announce this is the first episode that has Romeo and Juliet as a main focal point. Trust me, this will return. So yeah, the lesson's trying to go on, and Corey and Sean are in the back. Corey is attempting to listen to a baseball game because the Phillies are trying to make a playoff push, apparently. And, again, Sean's in the back trying to warn Corey, hey, man, you got to be careful. And Feeny walks up, realizes what he's doing, and takes it away from him. But before he just takes it away from him and gives him detention, because he will, don't worry, we'll get there. At first, Feeny starts going through the play-by-play.
I love when he does this to him. He gets a little bit into it, gets a little theatrical with it. He's back to the winning track, up the wall, and shuts it off.
Well, and I think this is a good places to talk about this, but when the man who played George Feeny, I'm currently blanking on his name. I know it's William something.
William Daniels.
Yes, thank you. I had Daniels, I had William. I didn't know how they connected, but yes, William Daniels. He talked openly often on like panels, and I'll say like I didn't want to disrespect teachers. I know how hard they work. I know how difficult their lives are, and he really wanted to bring respect to teachers. Because through most TV shows and movies, teachers and principals and administrators are these nincompoops. They're a foil to the hero, and he didn't want to be that. And so I think in the pilot episode, you're really seeing of this give and take, back and forth relationship where Corey tries to give him sass and attitude, and Feeny gives it right back to him.
I really do admire their relationship, and I've always given William Daniels all of the credit in the world for as much care and respect and reverence as he had for that role, specifically for that reason.
Yep. Corey is then upset, and he tries to yell at Feeny about, hey, that's mine. The girl who is on the desk tries to hurt Nicholas.
If you stab me, you better do it right the first time.
Right.
A little bit of sass.
But all of this leads to Corey getting detention on Friday,
and
which is a problem.
We've got a little clip here for us. I've snagged some clips from the episode, so let me share that one. Set us up here.
The tragedy here, Mr. Matthews, is not about a dumb girl or the boy who kills himself because of her. It's about the all-consuming power of love and the inevitability of its influence on each of our lives.
Are you aware that I'm only 11 years old?
Are you aware that you have detention Friday afternoon?
No, actually, I did not know that.
That's a perfect example of that back and forth. Very sassy and still respectful,
Right. Well, and I think it's just that at the end, he is still the authority. So he's willing to give his students room to, for lack of better wordings, hang themselves. And when they cross the line, he says, nope, you've crossed the line. Now you have to deal with consequences.
Indeed.
So nothing but respect for Mr. Feeney's prowess as a teacher. So then we move into the next scene, and the first scene in the Matthews house. And it takes place in a very special location, Corey and Eric's room. If you don't know, Eric is the older, cooler brother to Corey.
Oh, yes.
Corey is the middle. And eventually we'll meet Morgan, his baby sister. Mm-hmm. And we discover that Eric's trying to get a date, and he succeeded. And unfortunately, it's on Friday. So a lot of things are coming into place on Fridays, making it much difficult on our young friend, Corey Matthews.
His world is just coming apart at the seams at this point.
Yep. It's like his world is just shaking.
And I really have to point out, at this point, Eric is seen, at least from Corey's vantage point, Eric is a very cool guy who almost can do no wrong. There's very little that he could do that would really knock him down off the pedestal in Corey's eyes.
Yep.
Until now.
He really looks up to him, and they truly do have a special relationship. They're forced to share a room, and at the end of the day, they're both trying to just do whatever they can to get to Friday, like most kids. Eric has a date, though, and Corey just now is trying to get to that baseball game. And unfortunately, he's learned that he's no longer going to the baseball game because Eric's taking his date, Heather.
You could be cool about this, or Dad! Yeah, that never works.
Yeah. So then, our first scene in the bedroom is over, and now we're off down to the stairs where Corey is about to get to his dad's attention when Mom steps in. We meet Amy Matthews, Corey's mother, and she's kind of concerned of, hey, I heard you got detention. Corey's like, how did you know? And then we learn that Mr. Feeny isn't just Corey's teacher, but he's also his next-door neighbor. So again, his world is a little more complicated than we thought it was going to be.
It is. How did you possibly...
How could you possibly know that?
He poked his head over the fence. You bought a house next to my teacher. I want to move.
Right. I want to move. Get the guy with the golden jacket.
Yeah. But I love this here. Alan and Amy, Corey's parents, they don't jump right into discipline mode or immediately laying out a punishment framework. Their first question is why. Why did you get detention? And Amy has Mr. Feeney's reasoning that he'd be more interested in the game than learning about Romeo and Juliet. But even their body language, it's a very laid back, very open. And it opens up that conversational window for the three of them to have a conversation to learn what the impetus for this detention was, so that it's not just I'm your parent, you're in trouble, I'm the authority figure. There's communication up there. There's dialogue to be had there, and that continues through the conversation as it moves on to Eric and the baseball game dilemma.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, Alan, he repeats like 3 times, why did you get detention? And he starts to get a little more firmer with it, but he's not like getting up in his face, and trying to be the authoritative dad. And I think in TV, a lot of times at this time, we saw a lot of authoritative dads.
Yeah, and he wants Corey to explain himself. He wants Corey to take some responsibility for his choices and be able to explain that and to even to understand himself why. Right.
Yep. And then we get the cutest kid in all of television, Morgan. Because Corey says it's probably one of my favorite lines. Mom, I'm a kid. I don't understand the emotional content of Full House.
I do.
He's so adorable. Yeah, but that's one of the first big '90s bombs in here is Full House, because that show was a powerhouse at the time.
Full House is a TV show in the universe of Boy Meets World. There's no chance of a crossover.
I don't know. I think there's a chance that there still could be.
Boy Meets World, Full House, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say, in thinking of dads at the time, even though, Bob Saget, who played Danny Tanner, God rest for him, but like he was still such a tall person that there was a physical dominance to his girls. Where a lot of times I think we see Alan, he's sitting down, he's relaxed, he's just spending time with his kids, where it always felt like Danny Tanner was doing something, he was cleaning something, he was always moving, he was always doing stuff, and when he talked with them, he was always kind of a lot of times standing over them,
And even with Danny, with his job as an on-air news personality, a lot of his scenes with the girls, he'd still be in the suit and tie, even, or at the very least, more of a professional dress. Alan, a lot of the times, you'll see him in a sweatshirt, or even if he's wearing a tie, he's in jeans, or he's got a more casual jacket on. So it's a lot more laid back. The costumers seem to be very intentional about that to give that family dynamic a little bit of an extra thought there.
This does lead into Corey kind of being a little on the meaner side to his sister. Morgan's just trying to help, trying to be cute, and Corey's just kind of throwing a lot of preteen angry sass towards her way. And I just don't think she deserves that.
I'll call Corey sass.
Corey sass.
Why don't I just run around the field in my Spider-Man underwear? You don't have to dress up on my account. But she gives it right back to him without realizing it,
I know, she's just too cute. And then Corey's trying to still get back to the point at hand of, hey, he promised me baseball tickets. This is our thing, and he's ruined it. And Amy's response is, oh, you got the date? I'm so happy for you.
Oh, yes,
and now,
that's the mom.
Well, now Corey feels like, okay, well, mom's not on my side, which means dad's not on my side, because dad said, hey, he paid for the tickets. He can take whoever he wants. So now who can he trust? And Morgan's still going, well, you can trust me. And I got to say, I probably will always relate most to Corey, no matter what phase of life I am in. As I look at it, at the age I was at the time that Corey would be, I probably acted very similarly. And so when he's giving a lot of attitude and sass towards his sister, I'm like, yeah, I probably did the same thing. So I'm sorry, baby sister, you didn't deserve that. All right. But anywho, so we move back to the school, back to the cafeteria. Corey, Sean, and Nicholas is sitting around discussing what they got for food. And, apparently Nicholas is an only child, so he has special food made up for him.
And
Sean
fun to note. Sean reveals there that he's not an only child. And, we first learned here in the pilot, Sean is not an only child.
Yeah, we'll meet Sean's siblings as we go along, and we're going to have to figure out canon-wise in the Dad's Meet World podcast canon, how is this possible for Sean's siblings to be how they are?
Know that?
Well, anywho, this is when Corey reveals, I'm living on my own, I'm living in the treehouse.
He's an orphan.
And they're just like, huh, that's cool. Yes, he's an orphan.
Now, I never had a treehouse, but I would consistently, I would have a tent, either an A-frame or a little dome tent, 2 to 3 man tent as a young teenager, middle schooler. And I would set that up in the backyard and sleep outside all summer because that was the only way I had my own room. but it wasn't because I was mad at my parents and wanted to be an orphan. But, I can kind of see where Nicholas and Sean are thinking, wow, that's kind of cool. Yeah, you're on your own, doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, is I think Corey, in the beginning, was trying to be this rebel, and be cool, just like his brother, be confident. And I think, as the episode goes on, Eric is trying to make it clear to him of like, I am not what you think I am. Stop putting me on this pedestal. Do not be like me. Mm-hmm. And so Corey's trying to convince the guys, hey, let's go to the game. And they're like, with what money and how are we going to get there? And the game's sold out. It's like, we'll deal with it. And then Sean's like, you also have detention Friday, buddy. And he's like, he loves me. He'll let me out of it. He's like, nope, he hates you.
It's one of the two.
Yeah, it's one of the two. So then Corey goes over to Feeny on his lunch break. And yes, so he then says one of probably the best dialogues in the whole show. He says, Mr. Matthews, I spent 35 to 40 hours a week dealing with perceived problems of whiny little people like yourself. Now, this is my lunch period, my reprise from the fray. I spend 4 hours every day, every morning, and 3 hours with you every afternoon. Now, for God's sakes, get out of my face.
I love it. It's perfect.
I will say a movie, I can't remember how many years ago it was, a few years ago, came out called The Edge of 17. And there was a teacher that kid walked into the room going, I'm going to commit suicide. He goes, oh, well, I too am writing a suicide note. And it's just like, every single day the student comes in and bothers me when all I want is 30 minutes of quiet and no teenagers around. Another good coming of age story. But anyway, we don't care about what's happening nowadays. We care about what happened in the 90s.
All right, get back on track.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. But, it is that sass coming back at Corey of, hey, you have my attention all the time. Give me a few minutes. And is this school so poor that they can't afford to have their own teacher's lounge?
In Philadelphia, I wouldn't be surprised, but I think it was probably a more real-world reason they didn't have the sets, and it just moved the story along.
That's true. And then, Feeny's trying to flirt with Evelyn. Corey's saying that he hates him, and she goes, oh, he definitely does not hate you. And I love the two of them give each other this little, crap eating grin, towards one another. Like,
Mr. Feeney's my teacher.
Kinda.
He hates me.
I love those smiles, those smirks they give each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Well, then we have this heartwarming moment where we're in the treehouse, and it's the first night there, and Amy goes to give him his dinner because, she's a good mom and wants to make sure he eats, but then also messes with him a little bit about, the fact that it's after dark, and she gives this kind of evil, goofy laugh. And I just love how playful she is with her kids. Mm-hmm. Again, she's not coming out there yelling at him, get your butt in here, she's like, hey, if he wants to spend the night out here, we'll keep an eye on him. It's, we're in a safe neighborhood, we're not going to worry about it.
Yeah, they're allowing him to have a unique learning experience. It's his treehouse. It gives him a sense of freedom and independence while having his hissy fit, but he's still in their yard. He's still under their supervision. He's still safe under their care, and they're still protecting him, and she's still bringing him dinner.
Yeah. Now, from what I understand of mothers, they do not sleep at all, even on a good night. So my assumption is that Amy, every 20 minutes on the dot, got out of her bed, went over to check, is Corey still there?
Oh, I guarantee
And at least probably 3 times in the night, she walked out there just to peek up. Yep, he's still there, and then walked back out, and probably sent Alan out there at least once, just made sure he also checked on him too.
He probably either slept in the kitchen at some point or on the ground underneath the treehouse for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice neighborhood they live in, but still.
Right. But, like, that's the part, I think, of the show that they're not going to show, is that, yes, they're willing to let him do that, but at the same time, they're still going to take the steps to make sure he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as now parents, we understand there's no way you're letting your kid sleep out there all night and not check on him once or twice.
Indeed.
Unless you're just, you're one of those parents that takes the medicine and goes to bed and then clocks out.
And sometimes you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sometimes you absolutely need to. And then Morgan tries to comfort him and tries to see, hey, do you need Dolly? And he's like, no, I don't. Go away.
The first weapon I'm going to grab is a chick with a head that flies off.
Mm-hmm. Again, though, Morgan's just trying to be a sweet, helpful sister, and Corey is just rude and nasty to her, and just not very nice.
He's not.
Yes, and again, I'm sorry. Get off my back, girl. But then Corey gets a peek over at Mr. Feeney's dining room and sees that he's setting a plate for two, and then he's now setting just a plate for one. Mm-hmm. And it's the first time we hear that classic Boy Meets World somber music, and I think it's kind of that like reflective, like, what am I seeing here? How do I understand this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a credit to Ray Colkard, composer for the series. He did manage to craft some really good stingers there that would just a little bit of emotion there to really set the tone.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's clear that Corey doesn't really want to stay out there, but I think it's like he's made his bed and he's going to sleep in it no matter what.
He's a very proud boy.
Yes. Not
so
that kind.
They share their sad dinner together with, Mr. Feeny none the wiser.
Yes. And then probably my favorite scene in the whole episode is the next one when Corey tries to go into him and Eric's room to get clean underwear, and Amy just happens to be coming out of the bathroom, and so she, takes a little toy gun and goes, "Freeze, mister."
And their conversation is just so great. I clipped that one for us as well, so let's listen into that.
Great.
You still feeling a little abandoned, Cor?
Yeah, well, life goes on.
Yeah, that's what your dad said when it happened to him.
Why? Who abandoned Dad?
You did?
I never did anything like this to Dad.
Oh, when you were little, you couldn't wait for your dad to get home from work so you could throw the football around with him? I'll tell you something, he looked forward to it as much as you did.
So how come we don't do that so much anymore?
Well, you got a little older, you had a bunch of friends, and you were more interested in throwing the football around with them.
Wait a minute, it sounds like you're saying I'm the bad guy.
No, honey, there's no bad guy. All I'm saying is that it's natural that people grow up and priorities change. Okay?
Mom? You were always very cordial to me when I lived here.
Thank you, Corey, and I give you my word that the new boy will never replace you in our hearts.
I love that line so much. It sounds like you're saying I'm the bad guy. She's like, no one's the bad guy here. Mm-hmm. It's not as black and white like that.
It's not.
It's very profound.
It's just life happens. People grow up and things, situations change. And, I can see that at many stages. I have 3 children of my own that are, 2 of them are 2 years apart, and the third one is 5 years different from the middle child. And you can point to many different times where there have been splits where previously 2 of them were really close and connected, and then all of a sudden one just kind of shot off somewhere else. And it's no one's fault. It's just life happens. No one's the bad guy. It's just something that happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's just one of those things, especially as a younger sibling. It's so hard to wrap your head around of, well, why is this happening? Why are these changes occurring? And I just appreciate that it definitely feels like Amy and Alan understand it's not just a one-time thing. Like, it's something that Corey has been festering with and dealing with and kind of growing frustrated with. And so it kind of feels like it's the culmination of, hey, he needs to learn a lesson. He needs to figure this out for his own. And we're going to be here for him, but we're not going to feed him the answer. But, you know, I love the fact that Amy gives him really good advice, and it just shows that, like, she's not just a mom who's just there. Because so often in these shows, again, at this time, either there was one parent that had all the answers, all the advice, and then the other parent was just kind of there to be almost a joke sometimes. Or just to give a couple funny one-liners. But Amy truly is a really good mom.
Yeah. And they really are a genuinely dynamic team. They work together. There's give and take, and they're not there to be a hindrance or an obstacle to the other one in the parenting process.
Well, and you feel that they're a team, you know. And it feels like, you know, as they talk about things, it's like, okay, when we talk to him, this is what we're going to try to do. You know, and that's what you have to do eventually.
Yep.
You know, my wife and I are constantly talking about how are we going to handle these things, and most often we get it wrong.
Amen.
Yes. But now we move into the penultimate scene, the life lesson scene. Could we have like a phrase that's like, this is the teachable moment scene, the weekly?
we do need something for that.
Confused, Mr. Matthews?
Yes.
Okay. Or
Mr. Feeney's my teacher. He hates me.
So we cut to detention. Corey is kind of bored, and Feeny is straight up ignoring him. And Corey decides that he's gonna push the limits, find out where Feeny is gonna start yelling at him. And it kind of feels like it's annoying him that Feeny's not paying attention. You know, so much so that he stands up, he starts dancing, he starts going towards the door, he walks out of the door, he shuts the door.
I'm in the hall.
Yeah, immediately comes back in. This stinks.
And it's kind of hard because on the one hand, it plays like it's just, oh man, he's not paying attention to me. It's just not fun. But on the other hand, like, he legitimately could have just walked out. But it really does, it speaks to how he's been brought up. He's been instilled with a sense of responsibility. He has punishment that he has to serve. Earlier in the episode, he said, you know, he'd find a way out of it because Feeny loves him. Well, he just showed that he could legitimately walk out of the building. Because clearly Feeny's not going to give him the attention he's asking for there. But his moral core is saying, no, you need to follow through on this. And so, yeah, sure, it plays as just not as much fun when you don't play along. But underneath, you still have that there.
Well, and to pull back the curtain a little bit upon us, like, as people who do youth ministry, you walk a very fine line because you don't have the authority as a teacher does to say, it's my way, the highway, I'm going to fail you, I'm going to give you detention, you know. Any of those things you don't have. They're there voluntarily. So if you have a kid that's being disrespectful, not listening, not doing what they're asked to do, you know, you can kick them out, but are they going to come back? You know, it's not like school where they're required to be there.
Yep.
And so I've had many of nights of, I really want to just take this kid out of here and tell him don't come back because you're too disrespectful. But on some levels, I got to let him play out. And I even had essentially a detention-like moment once where I had a kid who was like, you wanted my attention. That's all you wanted. Here it is. It's all yours. And you go, can we go back to the group? I'm like, no, you wanted my attention. I'm giving you 100% my attention. It's whatever you want. I'll give it to you right now. Let's talk about it. What do you want to talk about? You know, he's like, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. I'm like, this is what you asked me for. So,
Yep.
so then did you take a clip of the speech that Feeny gives to him?
I have part of it, yes.
Okay.
When,
That's all right.
when Corey shares with him that he's figured out the point. We've got a little bit there. Yeah, so here it is.
All right.
You shrewd little observer of the human condition. How blissful it must be for you to have lived so little and yet already reached your conclusions about the greatest wonder of the universe.
You know what, Mr. Feeny? Keep the radio.
Shakespeare wrote plays and sonnets. The Greeks wrote tragedies and comedies. Robert Burns, Emily Dickinson, the Brownings examined the depths of human emotions. And do you know what each one of these poets, playwrights, and philosophers had in common, Mr. Matthews?
They all took your class?
Every one of them was older than 11. You come into my classroom at the beginning of the year, and at the end you go, and I really don't know if in the time we spent together I have taught you anything. Well, this afternoon, Mr. Matthews, you are going to learn something from me. Do I have your attention?
Yes, sir.
Now, there may or may not be more of that lesson Mr. Feeny teaches when I share what Mr. Feeny taught me in this episode when we wrap up.
All right, cool. Yeah, I love this so much because almost to what I was just talking about, it's almost like Feeny had kind of a breaking point of, I'm going to teach you something, whether you want to learn it or not. Mm-hmm. And I like that you kind of get a glimpse of the real Corey and being respectful.
Yeah, for as much as they trade their barbs throughout the episode, you see that breaking point in Feeny and Corey. There's no defenses there, and you see just how rare it is. Mr. Feeny addresses Corey as Corey in this moment, not as Mr. Matthews. And as he's speaking here to Corey about the love of his family, and he really gets to the core of what makes love worth pursuing and ties that all back into what he was attempting to teach the entire class about the nature and the value of love. This is all without the defenses down, the shields, the barbs, the sass. It's all gone. Everything's out on the table, and these are just two human beings who live next to each other, teacher, student, George and Corey, just here. I want to teach you something of worth, and I want to make sure that I know you got it, Corey.
Right. Well, I like that it's not about the actual subject. It's about, can you comprehend this? Mm-hmm. Are you willing to ponder this? It's not just about school. It's about life.
Can you recite this and remember it for a grade and 2 weeks on a test?
Right. So we'll get back to that when we talk about the lessons of the day. So we get to the Matthews living room, and we have Corey trying to sneak back into his house because, again, still living in the tree house.
Must have got those underwear.
Yeah, the assumption it was probably like a night that he was there.
That would be my assumption. It seemed that way.
So, I mean, it could be 2 nights. Who knows? It just all depends upon when this happened. So,
Yeah.
But we're there, and Corey runs into Morgan, and Morgan's all excited, like, "Are you moving back in?" And he's like, "Yeah, don't tell anyone." And immediately, Corey's back.
And I love how Corey turns around and Alan's there, and Corey really just opens up to him in this genuine moment where you get to see how he's processed not just what he learned from Mr. Feeny in detention, but what he learned from talking with Amy, what would be presumably the day before or earlier that morning, however the time worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just love this moment because, again, Alan's continuing the bit. I think that's one of the things I love about him and Amy both, is that it's like they're continuing. It's almost like they're trying to play at the level that Corey and them will understand. They're not trying to be the authoritative parent. They're just, he immediately is like, well, good. Dinner's on the table and the kids have been animals. And Morgan loves it. So you have her giggling and it's so cute. But Corey says, hey, I'm really sorry that I abandoned you. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I don't think I realized it until watching it with my son of how many things my son does. And without question, I forget all about it. And he's 4, so who knows what he's actually remembering. But I'm sure he's going to come to me at some point and go, hey, I'm really sorry that this thing happened. I'm like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, buddy, but, thanks, and I love you.
Yeah.
But I love when he hugs him, and he immediately, they both yell at each other, no, don't hug me!
Yep. They know.
And then we move back to the boys' room. We find out that, let's just say Eric's date didn't go so well. And maybe he would have been better off taking Corey with him instead.
Yeah, and I love Corey gives him dating advice, that this 6th grader is giving his big brother dating advice.
Yeah, I think that's kind of awkward, don't you think?
Just a little bit. Take her to
the movies.
At your skill level, that's perfect for you.
Yeah, that's a little weird. I mean, I get it, but, it's a little weird it's coming from. But I think it does show the dynamic within the two brothers of they're both willing to discuss their issues of the day with one another. It's not like they just come in and they ignore each other. Like, they're open about stuff. And I love that, Corey's trying to encourage him. Hey, you're cool. Of course she'll want to date you. And he's like, I'm not cool. Stop saying it. He's like, no, but you are.
And a rare moment of Eric honesty that we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's so interesting in the pilot because the original conceit of Eric is the cool brother. And, I think it's almost a facade.
And there's actually a fan theory out there that since Corey is a central character and the central narrator, so to speak, that we see the world through Corey's eyes, and that you can attribute Eric's devolving personality, intelligence, character through the years as his younger brother grows and sees him and goes from seeing him up on a pedestal to at his same level to, man, I guess I kind of am smarter than you in some things. And so there's this fan theory out there that says that, Eric doesn't get dumber. We just see him through Corey's eyes. And as Corey grows, we see him as Corey sees him.
Yeah. Well, I have also heard that theory, and also Will Friedle addresses that at a convention, and he doesn't believe that's the case. He thinks that Eric froze to death, and all the things we're seeing are things in his head.
I'll stand by he got hit in the head one too many times.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer to view it as that. It is that, as he is growing, Corey, he's seeing his brother for who he really is, or for who he thinks he is. But also, there is a level of facade. Eric wants to be perceived as cool. Eric wants to be a ladies' man, but he fails. But I love the fact that Corey immediately goes, hey, give her a call. Who?
My nemesis.
Who? My nemesis.
Oh, yeah. And that last moment down in the living room with Morgan's a great little button, too.
Yep, I do love that. And that's that moment where he kind of makes up for some of his taking out his frustration on his sister, where he agrees to put her to bed and, play tea with her and, wants to make her know, hey, I still want to do this with you. No matter how big I get.
No matter how old I get, I'm always going to be your big brother. I still always want you to invite me to have tea with you.
Yep. And then Boy Meets World does this classic thing where they kind of wrap up the story, and then we got to have one last little bit. And so we go back to the cafeteria where we find out that Feeny was not setting a table for he and Evelyn to have a dinner date, but it was his sister.
Confused, Mr. Matthews?
Indeed.
Indeed.
As it should be.
It was his sister that called and canceled on him. Evelyn was never invited.
Interesting. Well, Evelyn, unfortunately, apparently you didn't get invited back either to another place. Maybe you got transferred to another school. Who knows? But thank you for your service. And we'll also give out to Nicholas as well. Thank you for your service as Corey's one-time friend.
That's right. And if I had I don't have anything loaded in the soundboard for you guys. So imaginary 21 gun salute for your service. Imagine playing taps or something.
The young lady we can't remember off the top of our heads because we're horrible humans. Thank you as well for your service and almost trying to kill Nicholas.
Oh, yes, yes.
I feel so bad. I don't remember her name.
Oh, yeah. Tell you what. Why don't we move into our next segment? Why don't you move us into our next segment?
Alrighty, so we've gone through the episode. We've talked out every detail as best we can. So let's go ahead and break down what we learned this week.
You are worth every inch of that C+ I gave you in math.
All right, so Tyler, what did you learn this week?
Well, I think one of the things I learned from this episode in particular is I have a lot to learn about interacting with my son. I think I have a bad tendency just due to not how I was raised, but just more of what's gotten me through, ministry, teaching, not teaching, but substitute teaching, school bus driving, coaching. It's being kind of, the quick authoritative, quick yell, get it over with, get it done with. And I think I need to sit a little bit more in and just let my son be, allow him to learn, allow him to struggle a little bit. And then there was the other day, there was something that we were doing that I was like, I'm just going to let him, he needs to do this. He needs to do something on his own. And I think it was like getting dressed or whatever. It was like he was refusing to. And I was like, I'm just going to sit here and wait because I know he can. And I'm not going to rush into there. And I'm not going to yell at him. Eventually he'll figure out if he wants to go do the thing, he'll go and do the thing. So yeah, I need to be a little more patient as Alan is and just willing to let my son come to me. What did you learn this week, Brett?
I would say my lesson that I take from this actually comes from Mr. Feeny himself. And it's this.
There is no greater aspiration than to have love in our lives, Mr. Matthews. Romeo knew it and died for it. Others know it and prepare salads. And those who don't know it will sit in detention for the rest of their lives.
It's so very easy to get caught up in all of the day-to-day crap that goes on, both here in my house, here in my neighborhood, in the country, in the world. And it can be very easy to lose just that concept of love and to fall into the mire, because love is not an emotion. Love is something we choose to do. It's something that Alan and Amy chose. Corey is a product of their love, and he is a product of their love every day. And my children are a product of my love with my wife. My marriage is a product of my love with my wife. Each and every day, it's new. It's a new choice every day. And so, Mr. Feeny, it's not necessarily a new lesson. There's nothing new under the sun anyway, but it's a very good lesson that there's no greater aspiration than to have love in our lives. And so I would say that is what Mr. Feeny taught me.
I love that unlimited potential. And it started with someone saying, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really powerful. And we took a couples retreat, and it was amazing because that's all we focused on was each other. Go figure.
No.
And if you don't focus on your relationship as a parent, you'll suffer.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to turn what needs to get done into chores at the house, including spending time with one another and dates.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
Well,
before we wrap up, that other student was Kristen Moore. She was playing the character Vanessa Kincaid.
Vanessa, that's right.
And
that's right. He calls her Miss Kincaid.
Yes. She only had 2 other roles in her acting career, so not a big career. She was apparently out of the acting game by the end of '95. So, not
But
much
she was
more to
adorable
find.
and did a good job.
Oh yeah, she had that down pat.
Yeah. Again, thank you for your service.
That's right.
So, Brett, we're going to give our grades right now. So, what would you grade this episode of Boy Meets World?
I gave the pilot a B+. Very solid intro to the family, to the plot conceits. Could have been stronger, but it was it hit on all the spots it needed to hit on. So very solid B+ for me.
Yeah, I've been bouncing back and forth between B+ and A-, and I think I've landed at A-. I think as we were talking about it more, the more I just loved this episode. It's not one I go back to a lot, but there's such good things to pull from this. So I think it's aged better than what I realized. Let us know what you think, what your grade would be for this pilot episode, and maybe we'll share some of them.
In fact, maybe we can put a post up on Twitter when this drops, asking for your letter grade, and leave your grade in the poll and leave your comments. Maybe we'll read some of the best ones on air.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh goodness, pilots are weird. That's gonna wrap it up for this episode, the pilot episode, not just of the show, but for this podcast.
That's right. And if you like what you see here, we'd love to have you around for more. So keep following along. We're going to publish every Friday in the spirit of Boy Meets World. They were a Friday night anchor for TJF. You can find us on all kinds of, basically anywhere you will find your favorite podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, whatever they come up with between now and the next time we post an episode. And, of course, you can always give us a 5-star review if you feel like we earned it. If you don't feel like we earned it, we don't want you to do anything because... No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And
but if you're willing...
I believe you can email us too, right?
Of course, you can. You can email us at dadsmeetworld@gmail.com.
Yes, and we have some social media, don't we?
We do. I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Tyler Volk. It's pretty simple. I'm the only one.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Headley Art. It's really the most active profiles I maintain. Throw up all my stuff there for my art. And I'll start throwing stuff up from here, too. And we do have a Facebook page for the podcast as well.
We do.
Facebook.com/dadsmeetworld.
Yep.
Yes.
We can try to keep it as simple as we could.
That's right.
But yes, so you want to join us again next week, where Brett will take the helm as we talk on the fence. But before that, we got to end with a dad joke.
That's right. So what do you got for me?
Why was the chicken on the treadmill?
I don't know. Why was the chicken on the treadmill?
It was getting exercising.
Boy, I need a rim shot. I need a rim shot and my sad trombone sound effects.
Now, that's definitely a dad joke, but you know where I got that from?
Where is that?
My son.
Okay, that's perfect.
So,
all right. Well, I'll see you next week. Good looking.
yep. As always, we'll see you later, good looking.
You can find Dads Meet World on Facebook, Twitter, and probably a few other places just by searching for Dads Meet World. Dads Meet World is a production of Headfirst Studios. Headfirst Studios. Tell your story.